This is Coda Radio, episode 292 for January 17th, 2018. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and its related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every week, springing from the jaws of an alligator, why yes, it's our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Misa here.
Oh, he's back. Oh, the first appearance of Jar Jar in 2018. Oh, good. Good. Right? Yes. Well, you know what? This time I feel like I'm a little more prepared for it. Even though I thought maybe Jar Jar was gone, I think I'm more prepared for it. We're doing a weird off-schedule recording today. I don't know if we have anybody listening live. It might just be you and me. It's very intimate. It's weird.
And you.
There's nobody watching us. You know what I mean? Like, there could be. But if they're watching, they're not in the chat room. So for all we know, it's just you and me right now. Have we ever?
That's amazing.
There's only one other time in the whole show's history that we've done that, I think.
Yeah, I think just once. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have we have a lot to go through today. Hoopla, and then we're gonna get into linting, and why you probably should consider it. Everybody has a linter, right? No, I'm not talking about the thing that takes away snags off of your clothes. It's something a little different, plus a few tools to help you lint. But we first will start with the hoopla, as we are to do in the program. Now, Mr. Dominic, I know that you are never one to take a shot at JavaScript. And I hate to offend you with our first story, so I apologize right off the start here, but there is a pretty great post by Ian Allen over at the Stack Overflow blog about the brutal lifecycle of JavaScript frameworks, and it's everything I've been trying to convince you of this entire run of the show that you just refuse to accept.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the punchline. Let's hear it.
It's everything you've been preaching. But
yeah, I know.
So using the Stack Overflow Trends tool and some of our internal traffic data, Stack Overflow took a look at some of the more prominent UI frameworks like Angular, React, Vue.js, Backbone, Knockout, and Ember. And they graphed the life cycle of these different frameworks. And that's fascinating in its own right and totally worth going to visit the article. But there was a couple of things that stood out to me. There appears to be two major phases in JavaScript framework usage. There appears to be like a quick ascent, which you've drawn attention to, as the framework gains popularity, and then a slightly less quick but steady decline as the developers adopt newer technologies. So that was one thing that jumped out at me, something you've been saying for ages, which drives you nuts. So here you have it right here in writing with bar graphs. And then the life cycles tend to be only a couple of years, starting around so for an example, starting around 2011, there seems to be a major adoption of a couple competing frameworks, Backbone, Knockout, and Ember. Questions about these tags appear to grow until about 2013. And then there's been a steady decline since then. At about the same time, that's when AngularJS started growing. And then you also mix in there like Vue.js, and you see, again, the same exact cycle. And that's probably the component that stood out to me the most about the story is how you can really feel that. You didn't really need them to run the data, but this sort of backs up your gut feeling. Both TypeScript and CSS users have relatively high traffic to JavaScript frameworks across the board compared to other technologies they examined, which makes a lot of sense, especially in the case of TypeScript. So what do you think, Mr. Dominic? Is it time to pack it up? Call it in?
No, I mean, I think what I've thought for 292 episodes, right?
Yeah.
That JavaScript has definitely become, certainly over the course of the history of the show, a very powerful, very practical programming language. But the community around it is a little crazy. I mean, what is the movie, you'll know this better than I do, the 80s movie, the sci-fi one where they kill everybody when they turn 30?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Oh, I don't remember, but there's also a Star Trek TNG episode kind of where they kill everybody when they turn 60 on a planet. It's kind of the same idea. It's like you just get to a certain age and your usefulness to society is considered peaked, and they make room for the new.
And they euthanize you. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of like that to me with these JavaScript frameworks, right? I mean, and they do it to themselves. Like the Angular is probably the chief example here. Angular 1, 2, and 4, and now Angular 5 is going to be coming, are similar in name only, right? It's particularly when you start with Angular 1 and jump to Angular 2 or 4. I don't know what happened to Angular 3. It clearly died a savage death.
It's bad luck.
I don't know. I mean, we could go all the way back, right? We could start talking about prototype.js from way back when.
Yeah.
I mean, oddly enough, prototype and jQuery stayed relatively stable, but they've kind of fallen out of flavor. It's not just the upgrade thing though. It's so even if you're like, so the upgrade story is rough. But also there's Angular, there's Ember, there's Vue, and it seems like every quarter there's like a new hot JavaScript framework that all the cool hipsters with gold MacBooks are talking about. Right?
So there's so many aspects. I think this is why we come back to this, because you're right. It's if you look at just like the technical implementation, upgrading sometimes is significantly harder than it should be for the pace of these frameworks. That could be a whole episode in its own. Then as I'm reading through this, Mike, and we've been talking about this, I also start to wonder, is this symptomatic of the gig economy, where you get a new job, you want to build a new application, you want to try something new, it's a chance to try out the new fancy, and because people are bouncing around every few years or every 6 months or whatever to new gigs, it's sort of like hitting the reset button. Well, this time we'll try this. Whereas if you stayed in a job for 30 years, you probably wouldn't be doing that as much.
Yeah, and I don't, I'm a big believer, as people will know and sometimes not take kindly to, into staying on kind of the bleeding edge of things, right? But I don't, I think there's a limit. And, every 90 days seems crazy to me. Like I understand if like every 2 or 3 years it's time to look and see what new technologies, but every 6 months, every 90 days to 6 months to throw out or majorly break your JavaScript framework does seem super self-destructive to me.
I want to picture you for a moment, because now all of a sudden I'm hearing the room and it makes me visualize where you're at. So did you lean back are you like lean back lounging in a chair right now? Are you like?
I am not. I did move the chair because I hit my knee. Very good.
Oh, I was hoping like you have like this really comfortable chair that you're like leaning back and pontificating. So the mic's like a little. Okay.
No.
I'm gonna go with that if you don't mind. I'm just gonna run with that.
No, I'm telling you about this chair because This is a piece of shit chair. I bought it on Amazon. It was $30. It was an Amazon Basics office chair. Mm-hmm. So I recently figured out that the reason I've been having lower back pain is this chair.
Yeah, man. We have a couple of these in the studio, and they are the worst chairs I've ever owned. But they were low budge, and they were the right height, and I hate them. And it makes noise. If you listen with headphones, every now and then you'll hear my chair squeaking. When I first started podcasting with Joe, he thought I was farting. He seriously thought it was me passing gas. So I turned off my gate, because my gate kind of muffles it a little bit, so it might give a different sound to it. So I turned off my audio gate, and you could hear my chair popping and squeaking. It's just the worst chair. Anyways, yeah, okay. I wanted to just fantasize about you for a little bit, just pictured you in like a red velvet robe with a glass of gin or whiskey sitting next to you on like a table, and you're leaned back in like this plush chair.
That's only on Mondays. That's when we do the show on.
Okay, all right. Well, something that I'm not actually I'm not quite buying the premise of this next article, but it's a big claim. The death of microservices in 2018. Microservices have become a very popular topic over the last couple of years. Everybody goes to the Netflix example. Netflix has great system reliability, and Netflix does everything with microservices. Therefore, the rest of the world should be using microservices, so that way I'm great at DevOps. And there is some truth to that. And of course, it's also there's sort of a practical business sense for microservices. You're not going to run your own payment authorization service. You're not probably going to run your own streaming encoding service and run an entire CDN that like Twitch or Scale Engine has. You may not even build the software to manage subscriptions because there are entire services that can manage that for you. So there is some practical business reasons for microservices versus building it all yourself. There's really the two options these days are build a huge giant monolith, do it all yourself, or use a small set of specific services that each has a specific role. But there is a large amount of complexity that is introduced to developers when you go to microservices. And there is also increased complexity for the system administrators and the operators, and interdependency between services and blame deferral. There's a lot this article goes into that essentially says that people ignore these complexities and all of these downsides when they go in all on microservices. Then they continue to get ignored once they've been bit a couple of times, and then they realize they're too far in and they're essentially stuck. And also he points out things like versioning can be hard, tracking distributed transactions across these services, keeping state across these services is likely impossible in some cases. So he makes some good points, but it seems like to me, Mike, the economics behind microservices is unbeatable. Like just Stripe, just take Stripe for example.
Yeah, I kind of, I think this article was worth putting in, and I definitely, so I don't agree with what he defines as a microservice. Really.
Okay.
Because like you just said, Stripe. So is any API now a microservice? That's
essentially the positioning.
Things?
Yep. Yes. That is essentially the positioning.
That seems
so it's like calling everything really cloud, right? Isn't that the same thing?
It's calling it, so every REST API is a microservice, no matter how big it is, right? The whole point of a microservice would be, you may have like one authentication microservice for your entire enterprise,
right?
And you hire. Well, let's use a real example, right? People would hire us at the Mad Botter to build them a bot or a mobile app, but they might hire somebody else to build them like a Access app. I don't know why they would ever build an Access app, but they might do it. But both vendors would be tying into the authentication service, the one service, right?
Yeah.
And every application, every other service would rely on this service of authentication. Now, the reason I put this post in, though, I think he has a point, but I think he doesn't know the point he's really making. And I'm sure he's a fine guy. I'm not like down on him. I think what he really means to say is the hype around the branding of microservices is going to die down. Because what has happened is that basically all these, again, my mythical golden MacBook hipster, are calling basically any REST API a microservice, and they're using that to say that their architecture is, awesome and yours sucks, right? Which, fine. I mean, I remember when when reactive programming first came on the scene. I mean, first it came in like the 70s, but the new version, right? When React first came out, when people were doing like Swift RX, and they still are, but all of a sudden, overnight, if you weren't doing functional reactive programming, you were terrible. And now, well, looky, things are kind of, not a lot of people are doing it, right? There's some community that's doing it, and they're getting good benefits, but other people are using other patterns. I feel the same way about microservices. It makes sense for some things to be microservices. The authentication service I just described in the case of a large enterprise with a number of internal applications. But if you're just building like an app to do something, and I mean I'm using app very loosely, so it could be like a web app, then yeah, sometimes like a Rails style monolith is the right thing to do, right? A giant Django app, a giant Rails app, giant .NET app, whatever. It doesn't need to be a microservice if it's one application.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said.
But speaking of reviewing things from the past, I slipped one in on you in the doc.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I love it.
It is our good friend.
Oh, yeah. Egon.
The legend, the man himself.
Yeah.
Egon.
All right. We got an email in from Egon. He says, the last shows have been third or fourth prediction shows I've heard. It's about time you got back to the prediction shows of 2010 and 2017. Honestly, assess how good your predictions have been. Love the show. We have been slipping a few in. We didn't really go like all in, like full on predictions, full on reviews this year because I don't know, I was just kind of worried that people were burning out on that, but then at the same time, it's fun to slip them in here and there at the beginning of the year, so we did end up sticking a few in the last few episodes. We kind of had our cake and ate it too this year, didn't we? I didn't want to just do the same old thing and have people just not listen to the episode and be burned out on that, but maybe we should have. If we were going to be making predictions, maybe we should have reviewed them.
Well, this is an idea. I probably should have slacked you, but let's do it on the air. What the hell?
Do you know him? Do you have him handy?
I don't have them handy, but what I was thinking is we could probably. So one thing I hate about this time of year is every podcast in my feed is like, 20 whatever year in review, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or predictions.
Yeah, exactly.
We could do our prediction show next week when everybody else has got it out of their system.
That's true. We could. Yeah. Do you think people are still like, I think they're still kind of burned out on it, though, is the only thing. I wonder if it shouldn't be like a June thing.
Based on my Twitter feed, people love it when I'm wrong.
That's true. That is true.
I made a comment about Bitcoin, and I've gotten lots of replies on that one.
Yeah, okay. So we did our predictions episode for our notes. Well, I'm not sure, actually. I see we looks like we might have made some in 236, but our first episode of the year was 238 of 2017. Yeah, Mike's got wishes for the new year. Okay, yeah. Geez, this is the episode where you got rid of your office, too. Now you're back in an office. Oh, man, I bet there's some good stuff in there. I bet that's just some stuff. That's ripe with... All right, that's 238. If anybody wants to help us out and pull out some stuff that you want us to respond to, remember, on YouTube, you can timecode link, too. Episode 238, Undockered. That would be the one to go look at. I might, you know what? I'll link that in our Slack, too, so that way you and I remember, so we can pull that through. All right, so, yeah. All right, so you're right, Egon. You're right. You got us, Egon. If you want to send us an email, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com.
And he's still listening to the show. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, didn't he say he was stopping? He was done, right?
I thought he did it like 5 times.
Yeah. I love it. I'm glad he's still listening.
My favorite.
You can't quit us, Egon, and we can't quit you. We love it. So we got a little more hoopla to get to. Actually, you know what, Mike? This next story is kind of me eating humble pie about one of my predictions. So we are going to get to that right now, but I forgot about that. But let's take a moment to talk about DigitalOcean. Huge week over at DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean, not only are they constantly adding new services, like so we talk about their Spaces services recently. My favorite one that I'm getting all in on this year is their monitoring, which is baked right in and is so sweet. But DigitalOcean has just doubled your RAM and increased SSD storage for free. They're even a better deal now. They've also rolled out a brand new website. You can spin up a full application in seconds. You can start with just a base system, or you can deploy an entire application in seconds on their fast infrastructure. Everything's SSD. They have data centers all over the world positioned in key bandwidth positions for the fastest access possible. 40 gigabits coming into the hypervisors. Linux runs those things. And then they have a dashboard that is perfect. It strikes that balance between a power tool, but yet simple and easy to use. And it's designed for developers. They have an API it's an example. It's a beautiful example of how you actually base your front-end web product, like their dashboard, around a back-end API. You document it, you make it open, and then there's just a bouquet. How about that? There's a bouquet of open source applications built around the API. You know what, DigitalOcean, you can take that bouquet thing. Just run with it. I'm your idea guy. You just run with that. DigitalOcean.com. It's such an easy, fast way to get up and get going. You can cluster deployments. They have different types of deployments you can do for different kinds of workloads. Like if you want to do a GitHub or like a GitLab deployment, or you want to try out Nextcloud, or you want to mess around with FreeBSD, pre-built applications, you can skip the install and configuration process and just deploy Rails or Cassandra, or just get a system running up with Docker and then start loading Docker images like boom, boom, boom. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you'll be up and running. It's super fast. Then you can monitor it, and it's an unbelievable price. DigitalOcean.com, but here's the best part. Go to DigitalOcean, create the account, and then use our promo code CODERDIGITAL. One word, CODERDIGITAL. You apply that to your account, you'll get a $10 credit after you've created it. You could try out you could try any of their systems with that $10 credit. My favorite system, 3 cents an hour. 3 cents an hour. It's an unbelievable value. You get 4 gigs of RAM, because they've upped the RAM now, so it's even better value. You get 2 super fast CPUs, 80 gigabytes of SSD storage, and 4 terabytes of transfer for 3 cents an hour. Okay? So get our $10 credit when you use the promo code CODERDIGITAL and go at it. New pricing, new website. It's never been a better time to sign up for DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean.com, promo code CODERDIGITAL. Thank you, DigitalOcean. Now, I gotta admit, augmented reality is sucking. There's nothing going on with augmented reality. iPhone X is here with its fancy depth sensing cameras and nothing. This was the thing I was excited about. This was the thing where I thought Apple had a real lead here. You got all of these phones with decent processors and decent cameras in people's pockets, and you're selling the iPhone 10 in millions and millions and millions of units. You got AI Kit.
Yeah.
Or AR Kit, I should say.
AR. Yeah. So it's AR Kit, and I think what you mean by AI Kit is Core ML, which is the machine learning.
Yeah, but I was talking about AR Kit. It's just words are hard. So nothing with augmented reality. I mean, there's some apps. There's like 300. There's like 300 apps or something. Or no, I'm sorry. There's 1,000 apps in the App Store right now.
There's 1,000. I mean, there's a cool, like, if you have a kid. There's a cool Thomas the Tank Engine AR app. Yep. A lot of games, right? A lot of things for little kids, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, 30% of them are games.
Right. So I think what we're seeing is a couple things. Is consumer-facing AR outside of games is kind of a tough thing to conceptualize a product from. Right?
Okay.
Also, if I'm just looking at it for myself, right? If we were to just like stop development on Alice and decide we're going to do some AR product, which is not going to happen, but let's say in like the what is it, the DC 52 universe,
or the Mirror universe? Could be the Mirror. If you watch Discovery, the Mirror universe.
Oh, Madam Tilly, how are you? We won't even get into it. You might say, okay, we want to build an AR product. I would be very hard pressed to build an AR kit because then it's iOS only.
Yeah.
And the trend that we're seeing with all apps, right? Granted, we're mostly B2B facing, is hybrid. And people who want better performance, hybrid just becomes Xamarin or something like that instead of Cordova or some Cordova-like solution.
Is this the decline of Apple's control? Has Android gotten so entrenched now that much bigger?
I think it's the opposite. I think mobile is mature, right? Mobile is a pretty mature market now.
Yeah.
And like Xamarin, I've had my issues with Xamarin Forms in the past, but we just shipped a really, really decent Xamarin app, really complicated stuff. And you would not know it was Xamarin if I didn't, like, the customer never would have known. Really?
You think I could tell?
I don't think you could tell either, to be honest with you.
That's really good news.
A lot of like open. It's not actually OpenGL. I think it's doing it in Metal, but it's doing like down to the Metal drawing.
Really,
Metal, Apple's Metal.
That's what you want. I mean, that is if you're going to
back. It's OpenGL in this case, but whatever, right? It's drawing Bezier curves, things like that. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, and if it's still using OpenGL, I'm still pretty happy. I don't care.
I think you can use Metal. We just didn't. I mean,
so how much of a Mac is involved in that process if you didn't want, I mean, just for my own curiosity, if you didn't want to use a Mac, how much Mac has to be involved?
So if I was like religiously opposed to doing work on Mac, how are we defining involved? Are we like what the dev machine I'm working on?
Yeah, you could. So in theory, you could write that iOS application.
You could write it completely in Visual Studio on Windows.
It's not until you want to publish to the App Store that you need to run it through Xcode, right? You have to sign it.
Yes. I mean,
you have to upload it to the Connect. What is it? iTunes? I can't even remember anymore.
iTunes Connect. So yes, that's true.
Yeah.
What we have found is folks who want to work on Windows, the best experience, which is really nobody here, but in the past it's been a thing. The best experience is actually to have like a decent Mac, either someone's laptop with, they call it the Xamarin helper running, and or like a Mac Mini server running.
Right, and then it connects over the network. Yeah, that's right.
Because then you can do interesting things like automate the builds and actually build them to test devices on the Wi-Fi, or indeed plugged into that Mac.
That is so cool, actually.
So if I was a Windows guy, that's probably what I would do, right? But yeah, I mean, if you, of course, we did all the development on Mac. The only thing that gets really weird is like the line ending stuff between Mac and Windows. If people don't have their Git settings right, you get annoying, like, you rewrote the whole file. Well, no, you didn't. Just every line has a different character ending. But yeah, you could totally do that. I mean, Xamarin also has their Xamarin test cloud you could use, and they also have it's almost like a view the app running in the cloud somewhere thing. You don't get the performance, so it wasn't appropriate in this case, but you could see the UI on your phone without doing any code signing.
It's just a little. It's a bit of a shame that the AR thing didn't get bigger because I had hopes for eventually getting like information overlay type AR apps and stuff that would be really useful. Maybe it'll still emerge, but I think you're right. I think it's AR kit. Well, not that it's bad, that it's just iOS only, perhaps. The other thing, though, yeah. All right. Well, we should probably move on. But
we should.
Yeah.
My last point on that would be I think it is a reflection on AR not really being very expensive to develop, and two, a lot of AR kit particularly just because it's iOS only. That's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah, and the tech still felt pretty early when I played around with it. While we're on the iOS train, though, Transmit for iOS is going to get pulled. Panic wrote a blog post where they went through their logic on pulling Transmit for iOS, which is sort of surprising because it's a pretty well-respected app on iOS. It's pretty featureful. In fact, it was one of the early, very featured. They created Transmit for iOS when the share sheets arrived in iOS 8. They thought, boom, this is what we can do. People can upload and download apps through the share sheet. We're all on board. And it was well-reviewed, as they go to point out. And it doesn't make them enough money. Just not enough sales of Geeks on iOS. They say it made $35,000 in revenue in the last year, which for them is a minuscule fraction of their overall 2017 app revenue. God, I would love to have that problem. They say that's not enough to cover even half-time developer working on the app, $35,000. And that the app needs full-time work. We'd love to be adding new protocols that they've put in their desktop application, as well as some dream features, but it's a guaranteed money loser. They also note that because paid upgrades are still a matter of great debate and discomfort in the iOS universe, it sort of has led them to this point. They really probably can't sell Transmit 2 for iOS. It'd be unlikely to help the problem. It'd be a temporary spike. And the new Files app in iOS 10 kind of Sherlocks them a little bit with file management functionality. So they said they were in a murky situation. The thing left to do was pull it from the App Store. So they're going to remove it from sale soon. Everyone who has Transmit installed can still use it for the foreseeable future unless iOS breaks it for some reason. And they also are still going to update it for full iPhone 10 support before they pull the plug. So this seems like a pretty decent move. And if you've purchased it in like the last 60 days, you can contact them and they'll give you a refund if they can. What do you think, Mike?
So, I mean, obviously you don't like to see a good productive app get pulled for basically, not making enough money. I mean, that's totally understandable. This is something, and to Egon's email, I was really hot on the iPad Pro. Remember, that was like 2 years ago. I really thought we'd have like Star Trek style productivity on tablets.
I would like to have seen it.
You know what I just realized? It's the exact mistake I made with WinRT. Like, I just want that to be a thing, and it's not.
Well, I do too. When you were doing that at the same time, I was thinking, maybe I don't want a laptop anymore. Maybe I just want a nice desktop at home and then a tablet for when or a nice desktop at work, and then when I'm at home, a tablet so that way I can't work as much.
Yeah, but it's just not working, right? I think the market has basically said that tablets are
toys,
media consumption and game devices.
Yep,
they're not productivity tools. So this makes a lot of sense. It's super disappointing. Not that this Transmit is going away. It's disappointing. I think that the iPad Pro is a pretty powerful device. The Windows touch tablets are pretty powerful. Android tablets, I think, are going to be killed by Google, but that's a different thing.
The thing is you're never going to get real pro app investment if you don't have demos and you don't have paid upgrades, because real, genuine, good applications take serious investment.
But you can sneak paid upgrades now. Like with the way in-app purchases work, you can get effectively paid upgrades.
I agree. Yeah. That is true. That is something.
I think people just don't want to pay. I think, unfortunately, the tablet, as it was originally introduced, was a consumption and toy. Like, I think you have it best: media consumption and a toy.
Yeah.
And people don't see it as, I'm going to pay $50 for the new, Pro, whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not all doom and gloom for everyone in iOS App Store, though. as John Gruber points out, actually Horace Deju pointed out, but John Gruber highlighted that developer payment rate is now $25 billion a year, which is more than McDonald's revenue in 2016. So they're now, just the App Store is making more than McDonald's in 2016. During this year, iOS users will be spending about $100 million per day for apps. That was Google's AdWords revenue in 2012. The spending on the App Store has been rising steadily, about $5 billion a year since 2011, and apps are the biggest component of Apple's services and helped that segment gross over $57 billion in 2017, passing a Fortune 100 level of revenue. Just Apple services.
Can I burst your hype bubble a little bit?
Well, it's not mine. It's Gruber's, but yeah.
What percentage of that
right.
falls into one? Right.
That's why I set it up. I said for some, it's really good. Right. Yeah, but for others,
the distribution curve is really scary. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And also forget about categories. But if you want to, games are probably the top earners. I think that's been every year.
And games where you're buying crap like coins and stuff with in-app purchases. That's where a lot of the revenue is coming from.
And it's concentrated with just 30 developers, right? Like, it's not that there are millions of developers and everybody's making some money. There are millions of developers. Roughly 30 of them are making a lot of money. Some people are making okay money. Some people are making some money, and most people are making no money.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yep. Sounds like podcasting.
Oh,
it does. It's interesting. I don't really know what else to say other than it seems like if you're going to make any money in that, you're going to have to do in-app purchases and charge like a monster. So I just don't know. Now listen, Mr. Dominic, I know we got to get into linting. Do you want to, let's just shift gears. I'll mention Linux Academy and then we'll get into it. linuxacademy.com/coders. It's an advanced training library to help you get all of the skills you need to advance your career or maybe get a new gerb altogether or impress that client. linuxacademy.com/coders is where you go to sign up for a free 7-day trial and support this show. Self-paced, in-depth video courses on every Linux, cloud, and DevOps topic. If you're trying to get an AWS or Azure or OpenStack, OpenStack is the biggest boogeyman to me. I can wrap my head around all the others pretty well now these days, but OpenStack is sort of nebulous to me. So if I log into Linux Academy, I can get a pretty good assessment of how long it's going to take me to get my head around, and I can get my head around the basics in probably an hour over at Linux Academy. And then I could probably become pretty trained up in about 6 or 7 or 8 hours. It's great how they just kind of quantify it all out for me. Each individual section's broken out. They have hands-on scenario-based labs. So you're not just reading. They're spinning up virtual servers, and the servers match the courseware. So if you've chosen Debian or Ubuntu or Red Hat, the servers match that, including if you're working with AWS, they'll spin up servers there too, and you don't have to go create all of the stuff and add your payment information. It's part of your Linux Academy subscription. Real human beings, instructors are available when you need them. And a course scheduler to work with you when things are really busy and you want to just set some time frames and learning goals and then just have the system kind of help you stick with them. The community forks the training cards, like the memorization random flashcards that you can take, and they just get better and better constantly. And that community is full of Jupiter Broadcasting members, so they bump into each other all the time. And there's a vibrant forum there where people are talking about their successes or their trials. And there's public profiles where you can list all of the things you've accomplished at Linux Academy and link that to an employee or add that to your resume. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go over there and sign up for a free 7-day trial. linuxacademy.com/coders. Big thank you to Linux Academy. So, JavaScript linters. Linting, of course, is not a new term, but I think about it when it comes to clothing. But you think about it as a way to increase code quality. Yes, Mr. Dominic?
Yeah. So, the end of the year is always a time of reflection.
As Egon has pointed out.
Hey, Egon, this show's for you, buddy. As you're meditating alone, drinking green milk on the noble island of Acho, or is that Chu? I don't know. You think about what went right, what went wrong. And I can't say that I haven't been using linters for a while. What I can say, because I have, right? Because all the JetBrains tools basically do some linting. There's some default linters in different editors. But one thing I have found to be a major, don't want to say productivity increase. I want to say like pain in the ass reduction. Is that a term I can use?
Yeah,
like
that makes sense.
it's like is having everybody use the exact same linter.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm sure you do actually. When I got my first programming gig, there was a Java applet style guide I had to follow, right? Down to like, this is how we name variables. This is the methodology.
Right.
Even if you were doing like incrementers, right? Like for I equals, like you start with I and then you do that. They had it, and you would get dinged on that in a code review if you didn't follow it. That's probably a bit excessive, but
you knew where the rails were. It's like when you play. It's like when you go bowling and there's bumpers in the alleys.
Well, it's not. It's more than that, though. If you have people who are, if you're an organization of more than one person, people can leave. You can hire new people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes it so that there's not radical differences between different developers' code.
I think it's worth doing. Still, I mean, it's absolutely. Same with documentation to a degree too. Like keeping consistent, readable documentation that remains the same throughout the organization, for at least in your department, makes it much more usable, and especially in an emergency.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had lots of conversations. Like originally, I came to this about like, we should write a style guide, and I had conversations. It's one of those things that you say, oh yeah, we'll do that, and you never do it. And then I thought about, well, wait a minute, look at these linters. What are they really at their core? Well, they are a style guide that is automatically enforced by your editor. That's awesome. So what I ended up doing was going through every language we work in, finding a linter, and just arbitrarily assigning a I want to say flavor of linting to that language. So let me give you an example. Using ESLint in JavaScript, because I do most of my JavaScript in Visual Studio Code, you can set like what presets do you want, right? So I took, I think, the GitHub presets, because GitHub has a published style guide, and I made small modifications to them. And that's it. And now you have a JSON file that you can put in any editor that uses ESLint, and everybody is using the exact same linter, even with your custom modifications.
That's beautiful. It's just serene is what it is. That's nice and serene. I tossed a couple of others in there, but I totally grok where you're going. I'm not going to even...
It's the same thing, right? Any language, any editor. You could do Atom, you could do WebStorm, you could do... Visual Studio kind of has a linter built in, but you can add linters to it. I have to say, I'm going to be giving these type of topics every other week if I can, that are just like little easy hacks you can do to have greater productivity, either for yourself or more applies to if you're working with the team. Because this is maybe 10 minutes to set this up in your editor per platform.
Yeah, and it's so worth it.
And because I'm doing Alice in JavaScript, so obviously some of the presets like assume you're doing front end development. So I changed some of it, right? Like you know what, this doesn't matter for us, whatever. But man, does it clean everything up? You don't get things. People do like weird. Oh, they missed a semicolon. Semicolons are either required or they're not, and that's it. And everybody's doing it the same way.
That would make it feel, that just brings sanity to a group situation.
Right, it just brings professionalism to the source code too, if you ever have to hand it off to somebody else or indeed deliver it to a client.
I was also looking at, so you linked in here a Visual Studio Code plugin. I was looking at the one for Atom. There's a few for Visual Studio Code though, I think. So people can take a look, and
yeah, there's a bunch for both.
Even if it's just you though, I'm saying, just try it.
Try it. Yeah,
don't have to
it's
be a
all
group.
free too. That's the best part. All this stuff is open source and free.
Yes, that is very nice, isn't it? Very good. So all additional links too in the show notes about linting and JavaScript linters, and as well as links to those extensions in the show notes. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com and look for Coda Radio 292. Wow. And you will see all links to all that stuff in there. That's good, Mr. Dom. Is there anything else you want to cover on that?
No, I mean, I'm trying out 1710 since we have a few minutes.
Oh, you are. Mm-hmm. So what's your...
So my monitor issue was fixed. I tweeted you about that, and I know you replied, so you saw it. For those who don't remember, a couple weeks ago I was running Pop! OS with 17.4, and basically the resolution was garbage going from one monitor to the other.
Yeah. So for my
18.04
clarification, did you end up trying out Wayland? Is that what you did?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
And so you're working on Wayland right now?
This very second, I'm on the Mac because the podcasting seems to work better on Mac.
Yeah, but that's good. I'm glad to hear that. That's something I've been wanting to try too. I have an NVIDIA card with proprietary graphics, so I can't driver, so I can't run Wayland yet. But if I set up one of my Intel machines, I could.
I mean, I also did price out, and this is, I think, would be more interesting, workstations that are roughly comparative to an iMac Pro.
Oh yeah, and did you also throw a monitor on there?
Yes, I did, and that's where I was going to go with this.
Yeah.
If I were to go that route, it is a tough argument not to just get the baseline iMac Pro.
Yep.
Especially if you take off the upgradability, because that is actually surprisingly aggressively priced if you include a 5K monitor of that caliber.
Yes. Yeah. That's the kicker. The Xeon processors, ECC RAM, and the 5K screen pretty much bring the price. Oh, and then that's not even touching on the fact that these things all models come with RAID storage, so that that T2 chip in there is also a RAID controller, and so you're getting some, I can't remember, it's like 2 or 3 gigs of write performance to these things, which makes every build, every render, everything faster when you've got read speeds around 2 gigs and write speeds around 3 gigs. If you price disk performance like that into a PC, ECC RAM, Xeon processors, and a 5K screen, it's nuts. I don't know if you need Xeons though. I mean, I am a big fan of ECC memory, but I don't know if you could go with an i7.
So yeah. So I found something really strange, or strange to me because I'm not in the video production space. These Intel Core X processors,
okay,
which seem like they're like crappy Xeons or souped up i7s. I actually meant to reach out because System 76 sells them on some of their rigs. I meant to reach out and I didn't because I was busy with hospitals and crap like that. I could probably just do an i7. Right. Yeah. So the X has up to 18 cores and 36 threads, so it's a pretty nice chip. But you're right. Yeah, you could just do a regular i7 with. I would like ECC memory though, because and we can have a show about that. But there's a lot of benefits to doing that.
I would too. I'd like to have ECC memory, and to be honest with you, I'd also like to have 10 physical cores. That seems to be the sweet spot.
So. I did take your advice, though, Chris.
Yeah. What was that?
My current workstation is my 15-inch MacBook Pro.
Oh, yeah, really? Was that my advice? Did I say stop fighting it or something and give in to the dark side?
Just give in. Just surrender. You want it.
That sounds like me.
Very Matt Lauer of you.
Oh, wow.
The only case where I really tap it out, but when I do, I tap it out hard, is when I have to run a Windows VM and do dev on the Mac environment at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that usually has a Windows VM with a Mac simulator, or with the Mac running with not Xcode, but Visual Studio, because I'm doing Xamarin on the Mac side, and an iPhone or iPad simulator, or like a couple node servers running versions of Alice, because I'm trying to tie it into the Windows thing. So it's
the VM thing is definitely where things start getting complicated, right? I mean, because that's so much.
But the VM thing is solved by maybe 2 more cores and double the memory, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Because I have the i7. It's just that I don't have enough RAM to go around.
I thought my advice was build a nice desktop and then get a low-end laptop. I thought that was my advice.
Yeah, was it? Because I thought your advice was go Mac for me. I thought you were going to build a nice desktop.
Oh. I see.
No, I think you're right. I think your advice for me was, actually, I think it was the iMac Pro, right? Keep the iMac or keep the MacBook. I don't know. We have to listen. People who listen back, because maybe I got the wrong message.
The thing that I have a little suspicion that I remember I told you about the NUC, that new NUC that's coming down the line.
Yeah, people are talking about that.
I'm going to see. We'll wait and see. Since you and I have had our last conversation, I've been a little I'm a little sketched about about Ubuntu right now, just a little. Nobody freak out. But all my systems except for one of them is having issues that bug me, but they're not showstoppers today. They weren't a problem yesterday, but the week before, every day I was having a new problem. And
this is 1710?
No, 1604.
Oh, yes. No, don't. Okay, Grandpa.
Yeah, I thought by going LTS, I thought that would be the responsible thing to do. But no, yeah.
Before was giving me all kinds of headaches.
Yeah, I think I should have gone 7. Well, I'm just going to hang out here for 1804 and see how it goes.
Well, 1804 is looking good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some pretty hardware. I know.
Yeah, it's looking good. So is Windows 7.
Yeah. Well, and Dell has that nice workstation. It's basically an iMac.
Yeah, I reviewed that, actually. If you go check my YouTube channel.
I did.
It's nice. I really like that machine. And it has way better speakers than the iMac, if that matters. But
those words are blasphemy, but keep going.
The nice thing about that one in particular, that Dell all-in-one, is because it's Dell, you can start at like an i5. And then you can go up to Xeons. So that's an example which would they don't care about the Pro moniker necessarily in that case. If you want to spec it up to a Pro level machine, like I think the one I got had like 64 gigs of RAM and Xeon processors. So you can go all bananas on it if you want, but if you also just want to put an i7 in there with regular RAM, and that's the nice thing that Apple just doesn't offer you that. And when you
have to be extreme, right?
You are finding yourself in a edge case where they don't offer a product that exactly suits you, which is ironic because you should be one of their core demos. If you could go buy that Dell all-in-one and configure it just the way you want and then install Mac OS flawlessly, that would be an obvious choice for you.
It's weird to me that I can't buy a MacBook Pro with 32 gigs of RAM. Because I think that would basically solve the problem of I need to run Windows VMs. And I know, like, I could, over the LAN, like, run a Windows box and do stuff like that. But that is a lot of networking that I don't want to do.
Well, and you also want to, if you're on a laptop, you want to be able to open up the laptop at the airport and start
work.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't eventually happen. Dell just refreshed the XPS 13, and it's still limited to 16 gigs. It's also that low power kind of RAM. I wouldn't be shocked if at WWDC, to sort of stem some of this criticism, MacBook Pro Touch Bar version 3 comes out with
I think there'll be no Touch Bar.
Okay, maybe. Wow, that'd be a big reversal. But maybe. But I think I wouldn't be surprised, at least, if you finally get 32 gigs for the third iteration, 32 gigs finally arrives. Maybe a slightly improved keyboard, and let's go crazy. Why not a T2 chip with rated storage in a laptop? If you could do 32 gigs,
never gonna do the T2 chip.
Yeah, it might be too much power. It probably is too much power.
Too much power. It'll hurt battery life, and of course, God forbid, it's a millimeter thinner.
Right.
Fatter, rather.
Man, if you, that would be awesome.
No, honestly, if you could give me this machine with a slightly better keyboard and 32 gigs of RAM, it could really do. I mean, it does do everything I want now, except I hear the fan going 400 miles per hour.
And there's no getting around that.
That's not good for it.
Yeah, there's no getting around. You're baking it, and there's no getting around that. And the nice thing about a desktop again is, I know it's one thing to say, man, it really feels faster, it really feels different. The thing about a desktop machine, like the one I have upstairs, is not even that awesome anymore, but it's still pretty good. It's i7 with 6 cores, 6 physical cores. And I think this one has 32 gigs of RAM. It might have 64, but I think it has 32. My main system drive is a fast M.2 SATA drive. And then everything else is SSDs except for a large pool of storage. By the way, that's one nice thing right there about the desktop, right? Is I've got a system drive.
Yeah.
I've got a dedicated work drive, and then I've got 4 additional hard drives in a RAID 0. That I just use for like huge storage that just has to be really fast, but it has to be cheap, so it's spinning disk. And that's just then you know what? But just before I'll finish with saying this, not only do I have that flexibility there, but I can push it harder, and I can leave it doing more things in the background. I can have it doing all kinds of extra things that I would never do on a laptop, even if it was plugged in ever, because there's just more. It feels like I can push the pedal down further and I can get more performance out of the machine, and it stays about the same noise level the entire time unless I'm gaming. is really, and this is a custom built PC, so you could replicate this with an old Mac Pro cheese grater. But
I would be tempted actually. But you hit on another pain point that I didn't even think about. I spent about 30 minutes last night going through my hard drive on Mac because I tapped it out. And I'm trying to see, like, I think I have a 256 drive.
Yeah, I have Daisy Disk on my MacBook Pro that I edit on because I'm constantly having to go and clean stuff up so I have room all the time.
Now, I get it. I could have paid Apple's ridiculous upgrade fee to go to
2 terabytes, but that's like $2,000 or something. It's over.
Right.
Yeah.
But if this was a desktop, I could do exactly what you do. I could have a boot drive of like 256.
Yep.
That is highest quality SSD I can afford.
Yep.
And then I can just have a 72 RPM drive, right?
Yeah, I just got 4 of them and I put them in a RAID 0, and it's plenty fast like that because
it'll be loaded with Photoshop files and things like that people send me, right?
That's exactly what I do. Or if I just need, like, when I'm rendering out a file and I just need a quick scratch pool so I can read from my OS drive and I can write to that RAID 0 of disks, and it's basically as fast as an SSD. I know that one day one of those drives is going to pop, so I don't put anything in there that I don't have backed up.
Do you have like a NAS? Or are you pushing it all to a NAS or something?
Eventually, yeah. Eventually I put it up to a NAS, yeah. But while it's a work in progress, I use that scratch. I have 4, I think they're either 1 or 2 terabyte drives. I don't care, right? Because it's just large dumb storage. I actually call it Scary RAID. So that's what I've named it in the RAID management tool. So that way I know when I look at it, that's my pool of old disks that are going to die on me one day. And so it's always in my mind as my scary RAID, but it's also my fast dump of storage. And when I think about it, I think I could do that on my MacBook Pro with a $800 Thunderbolt enclosure and then another $800 worth of drives. I could hook up that to my MacBook Pro and I could have some dumb storage like that. But the nice thing about the desktop tower is it's just the bare cost of the disks. And I'm done. And they're all inside one box, too. There's no external enclosure.
It's also that you could amortize that cost, right? So you could say, you have $3,000 today that you can spend up to $3,000. Yes. And then in 3 months when you get an ad payment or whatever it is.
Which is exactly what I did. Is exactly what when we when Bitcoin, actually, when Bitcoin price was right, I just, I got that thing a new video card, and I got those drives on an unbelievable sale because I wasn't buying anything fancy, and I think I had the machine for 6 months before I did that.
So this is why I'm feeling pressure, right? Every Mac I've ever had that has started doing this crazy thing with the fan has died within 3 months. Kernel panic, like I back up my data every day now.
You have a touch bar? You have or that generation?
I have a touch bar, yeah.
I have rendered and edited many a video, and I'm talking like for my New York trip, those were like 12, 13-hour marathon edit sessions, nonstop. I don't know, it seems like it holds up.
So is it just that the fans are louder in this model, and
it's that if you go read their marketing literature, these fans have a new curvature, so they produce a different tone now, which is supposed to be more appealing to most people.
It sounds like the tone of a giraffe being strangled by an orangutan.
Yeah, it's like this higher pitch.
It sounds like it's dying.
Yeah, the old ones would have more of a whoosh, and these have more of a yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly okay. Yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking any day now she's just gonna kick off.
I still am not a big fan of keeping a laptop hot all the time. If I could, I would avoid it. There was no other price point I could get. I needed a Final Cut machine. There was no other price point I could get in that would give me high performance Final Cut, and so I got the Touch Bar machine. And
that's the problem. I need a relatively high performance Xcode machine, right?
Yeah.
Even if I'm using Visual Studio instead of Xcode, I still need Xcode because.
Yeah. It's funny how much that overlaps.
Jim.
Yeah, and Johnny, I'm sure. Yeah,
Johnny's like, but I could make it an inch thicker, and it would solve all your problems, or not.
Well, Mr. Dominic, I find your tools and that you use to your job fascinating. So I always like when we talk about it, and I'll be curious to hear how 1710 goes for you. Don't try 1804 out yet. I was warned off of it yesterday to wait on that.
Yeah, I've been using it for about a week. What
do you think of GNOME so far?
Well, I was using GNOME on a POP before that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay. So it's not that different.
What do you think of Canonical's take on it then versus the POP take?
I mean, if you like orange, it's great.
Yeah, right.
I do like orange, so there you go.
It is very orange, yeah. Yeah, Pop! OS is a good-looking desktop OS. You know, they've put a lot of work into that.
I still, the problems I had with the Galago Pro, I actually, Carl over at System
That's right. You were having a back and forth on fixing the firmware issue, trying to get the fans down.
He did reach out to me after one of the shows we did, and we were able to. I had to do something with the firmware, basically undo it, reinstall it, whatever, because the fan was spinning up too much. Yeah, I mean, it's a decent machine. I like it. I like 1710 a bit better than I liked Pop. I think 1710 is a little more polished, if I can use that.
It feels more professional, where Pop! OS feels a little more fun.
Right. And this is one of the things I'm trying to figure out. Like, because I am going to do what now I know you're suggesting, which was get a workstation for my office and just like use a laptop, one of the laptops, when I'm on the road or at home. I'm trying to see, like, can I, when 1804 comes out, can I just buy a Dell or a System 76 Linux workstation and save money and have upgradability? Or do I have to go all in on Xeons with Apple, which is definitely overkill for me, and I don't like that I can't upgrade the iMac.
Yeah, but I can see where you're going, because if you could get a nice Linux workstation, then your current MacBook Pro could fill that when you need to do something on the Mac roll, but it wouldn't be as pressed all the time, so it would probably last longer. So then
it could be a 5-year laptop.
Exactly, which would be nice because those Macs are based on their cost. That's how long you should be able to get out of it. And so my closing just like little tip for all of this will be something that's helped me make this more and more viable, because what I've kind of done this now out of no other option, because not only do I not have like a super beefy machine typically in the RV, it's like one of my older laptops. Like right now it's a 2012 machine. Okay. But I also am on a MiFi, so my bandwidth is balls too. And so I'm like on a slower machine and I got horrible bandwidth. So what I've taken to doing is just team viewing into my workstation at the studio, or X2Go, depending on what you want to use. And it actually is very usable. It's like if you want to start something up, I can open up terminals, I can read the text, I can start off background downloads, I can export files. It is, for setting up just some work that the machine's going to chew on for 35, 40 minutes, it's great. It is. So I can kick that off from home at my workstation here at the studio, where we have a 100 megabit connection and I've got the 6 cores and all the storage, So it's great. So you can kind of leverage tools like that to make this a more viable option too, where, yeah, it means not having your most powerful system at home, but there is like a backup escape hatch where you can portal into your system at work and have all the power, and it's like you're sitting right there at the desk. It's a little laggier, but not TeamViewer is particularly good. It's pretty good, and they've just released a new version for Linux.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I was. I don't want to get people excited, but I was speccing out certain workstations because I don't need Xeons, right? I mean, what I found was if I'm comparing Xeon to Xeon, Apple to Apple, or Apples to literally Apple, then the iMac Pro is just a better buy in almost every case.
That Dell does have a good screen, though. That all-in-one does have a good screen.
It does, right. But if I don't need the Xeon,
right,
and if I drop the ECC, which I'm not sure that I'm willing to drop, but
if you don't need 3 gigs a second write speed,
right?
But everybody
don't.
No, but everybody does. I mean, it makes VMs run better. Everybody does.
Yeah, no, I probably do need that. I can instead of spending $5,000 plus, I can probably get away at like 3, and then I can just do incremental upgrades every year.
Yeah. Especially if it's a tower.
Well, I'm looking at towers. I'm looking at. I'm actually not looking at. I like those all in one, but if I'm not getting the Mac, I'm not going to get the all in ones.
Yeah. I really do like having the tower. Even the separate monitor is nice because I find that my monitors actually outlast my machine, so it's kind of nice just being able to reuse that monitor.
Same for me.
Or add additional. Like I have one horizontal and one vertical, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to add a third monitor here pretty soon. And nice.
I have a Dell 4K, so I'm really not going to buy a monitor.
Exactly. All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, very good. Right. Good to catch up on all of that. I find it fascinating. Where do you want to send people throughout the week?
Go to themadbotter.com and at Jumanuko on Twitter.
Yeah, very good, very good. You can also find me on the Twitter at ChrisLAS. The whole network is at Jupiter Signal. Is it at Coder Radio Show? We have a Twitter
for Coder Radio Show, yeah.
Yeah, a new Twitter for the show, too, at Coder Radio Show. Geez, we got to start mentioning that earlier in the show. And coderradio.reddit.com. Wow, it's a lot of stuff. And then last but not least, send an email, and like Egon, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. You got a mention. You got a couple of mentions
We got to
this
print
week.
T-shirts. Be like Egon.
Yeah, be like Egon and send us your feedback at jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. Catch our live times over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar because things happen and sometimes they change, and we'd always love to have you join us live over at jblive.tv. Thanks for being here. See you next week.